Um, Thank you. It's a great honor and a privilege to be here. I've been feeling like a kid in a candy store over the last couple of days. Meeting some of my heroes, and it's really great to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm an entrepreneur from India, and the social venture that I work on, the Urban Vision, has been very interested in thinking about how to make our cities uh, livable and healthy and inclusive. And I often think about when it all started. A little more than a decade ago, as a young architecture student, I first visited this great city, the city of Mumbai, and it is the great love of my life. In so many ways, it's probably been the single biggest influence on my life. It's a place that has made me who I am. It's it's probably the reason why I am so fascinated with urbanization and cities. A lot of people, I don't know if some of you have visited visited Mumbai. If you have not, you must come. Uh, because if you spend a week or so in my city, I think your idea of humanity will increase, and the challenges that we face will just be all around you, and there are so many things going on at any given time. And I've found this city magical. It's full of life and light, but it's also a city that doesn't make any sense. The love that I have for it, or a lot of people will tell you they can't really make sense of why we love this city so much, because like love, there is no scientific explanation to loving a city that makes your everyday life as chaotic as this. I mean, it was monsoons last week, and the monsoon seems to get more intense every year. And this is what the city looked like last week. We came to a complete standstill. If I have to go to meetings, I work very close to home. But if you have to go to work a little bit far away, you have to brave those trains, or spend 2 hours in the road to just go 10 miles. And that density is probably one of the world records, because that train was planned for 1,600 people, and about 5,000 people use them at any given time. So it's a city that doesn't make sense. I rent in Mumbai. I'm not from there, and my rentals are as expensive as they were when I was in Boston and California, which is a very expensive part of the world. And obviously it was more livable there and all of that. But what I'm trying to say is that the real estate prices in my city are, in some parts of the city, as expensive as Central Park South, which I think is the most expensive real estate in the world. And I am actually one of the lucky few in my city which has I have a home. Almost 60% of the city, and this is a statistic by the city government, have no access to formal housing. They all live in slums, and it's the same number for sanitation and water access. It's a difficult city, but we still love it, and it's a city that all of us, as the community of urbanists, have to really, really pay attention to, because I think, and this has been spoken about extensively. We all know that we are today an urban species. Over 50% of us live in cities, but the next generation of urbanization is going to take place in the developing world. There's going to be double the population in Asia and Africa, and a lot of that urban rise is going to happen in India. And if we don't figure out how to deal with the scale and size and magnitude of the urbanization that we've witnessed in Mumbai, it's a scary proposition for the future of the world. In many ways. But I want to qualify that statement by saying that India is still the last large rural nations of the world. We're still only 30% urban, but that is still equal to the entire population of United States of America and half of Europe. So it's really large, but we are still, the last large rural nations of the world. So there is opportunity to ensure that next generation of urbanization can be inclusive, sustainable, livable, and healthy. So this is the number. We are going to be adding 600 million people into our cities in the next 3 decades. That's roughly 40 new Mumbais. And we can't even deal with the current Mumbai. It, in many ways, represents the worst aspects of urbanization. We have no housing that we can talk about. Most of our city, has no sidewalks where you could walk on. There's massive kind of challenge in every aspect of urbanization. So I think this is the future of the next set of cities in developing world if we don't figure out what to do about it in terms of scale and magnitude. And how do you solve this at the scale of 18 million people? And that's the challenge that is out there for not just us in India, but rest of the world. I always say this, this social, economic, and environmental future of the world depends on this transformation of India, but also of other developing nations. And we live in a very interconnected world. Climate change has no borders. So if we don't go off fossil fuels for transportation, it's going to affect everyone. And we know, we've already seen even here in Europe what civil unrest is doing to Europe. And these are global it's global community challenges which we all have to kind of come together to think about solving in some ways. And I think that's the kind of charter that I came with. I was discussing this meeting in Mumbai, and we really need to build a global coalition in a way to figure out what to do about the next generation of cities in India. I had this amazing opportunity as a young architect to work with someone who was a very, very influential man. I think the biggest lesson that I learned when very, very early in my career was that to make cities work, the answers are more political than technical. I remember right after architecture school, I was working for this architect who used to advise the Prime Minister's office and the Chief Minister's office, and he had access to the highest political leadership in the country. I spent a couple of years with him trying to make these reports and develop plans to figure out what to do about the crisis of cities in India. And it really, it really made no difference. And I remember at that point thinking that, being a prime minister is actually not that powerful. Imagine, having, at that point we had a government that was in majority. They could have done a lot of things, but nothing really happened. And, we still continue to follow models of development that is rejected by all of you in the West. The kind of policies that we are pursuing right now is all the worst examples of what America did especially. We love urban sprawl, gated communities, flyovers, and expressways. We're at that important stage where we really need to kind of think about how to, pursue the next generation of urbanization. And this last year was a historic moment in our, post-independent history. We've, like many of you, we've been historically averse to urbanization in general. Our founding fathers, Mahatma Gandhi, often spoke about things like India living in its villages, and our policies for a long, long time pursued that idea that India lives in its villages, and we did not pay attention to cities for a really, really long time. But last year, the two of the biggest political parties during the election years spoke about creating 100 new cities, which was terrifying and exciting at the same time. So, so that was, it was a great moment, but it's also a great moment for responsibility, not just for us, but for the larger community. And I, after my early kind of interest and, I was exploring architecture, urbanism, and journalism. But a few years ago, I thought the best way to kind of participate in this system of making cities livable was through entrepreneurship. As a social entrepreneur, I was really interested in looking at how do you kind of change the system, working with different actors, not just the government, but private sector, communities, media. We worked on a lot of public advocacy and education programs, try to create a coalition of leaders to, think about cities. This was 2008, that's George there, the mayor of Bristol. I was working on this video series to think about what to do about cities. We had a lot of, fun things. There were a lot of cool things we did then, talking about solutions for what makes cities livable. We were probably one of the early organization that was looking at cities as a solution. And we really wanted to be constructive, because the relationship between different actors in our society, between government, private sector, civil society, is full of angst. It's very confrontational. If you look at any of our television show at any given day, you'll see that everybody's angry with each other. And we wanted to create the space where people could have a civic discourse and come together to think about what to do about cities. And it was also educational, because we needed to think about, what are the, have a dialogue on what our choices in terms of policy means for our future. We even did things like that, like this was before Smart City became like a trend. We had this app where citizens could report civic issues in their local areas and get the local government to fix it. So it was all very fun and exciting. But I remember in 2011, we've done all these really exciting programs and projects. But I remember all of us being a little bit, we were not happy. We were not satisfied. We were really not making any tangible progress or impact. It was just these cool new things that we were doing. It got a lot of press, and people talked about it, but we really did not see any tangible change in thinking about cities. And this was, in 2011, I remember we were doing a study of the first major program that India had in its 60 years of independence. This is the Jawaharlal Nehru National Renewal Mission. It was the first, big focus on city, urban renewal across the country. And I remember, and this was 2011, when the program has been there about 5 years. And this is what it looked like. Most of the investments for public transport went into expressways and roads. While, this is the way the modal split of any Indian city looks like. Most of the people in our cities walk. It's a very, very tiny group that is actually using the car. And while rest of the world is trying to increase the amount of people who walk everywhere, we already had it, but we are investing into the small minority which own the car. And I remember, at that point, being deeply disturbed. A lot of us were, really frustrated with the way, things were going and what was, talked about as the largest democracy in the world, a lot of our programs and policies reflected that, we really focus on the small, narrow private interest over communal good in terms of policy investments. This is the city of Mumbai. Can you believe it? 55% of my city walks as their primary mode of transport. I have this other map with other world cities. We are probably one of the highest, right? But we have no footpaths or places for people to walk. But over the last decade, that is the single biggest investment into public transport infrastructure. It's an expressway, which links, it's just a 5-kilometer long expressway that links north to South Bombay. And its capacity, its daily capacity, is equal to 1 hour of peak traffic in one of our western lines, which is a very popular, it's the most used line. So in terms of talking about private versus public, this is a big representation of what's happening. And it's still happening. We had a new government last year, and they have again announced a big expressway from north to south, and it literally only supports 1% of the city, because most of the city walks to work, they use the train, or they cycle. It's just that 2% of the city that uses cars, but that's what we are building the infrastructure for. And this is, I remember this was like my big pet project. I spent a couple of years thinking about democracy and how do you make it work for everybody. And this is, and I had the great opportunity to work with some of the world's most biggest scholars on democracy. And this is happening all over the world. I think private interests are being delivered to instead of public good all over the world, and it manifests in multiple different ways. But at that point, the reason this happens is because we actually have no accountability in the way our governance functions. This is the map of how Mumbai is run. The Indian central government has most of the power in terms of financial capacity. Most of the taxes go to them. It's changing now, especially over the last year. The chief minister of Maharashtra is the state where Mumbai is essentially electing our CEO for the city. The mayor I don't even know who my mayor is, because he just comes and cuts ribbons, or he really is just ceremonial, not very important. And unless this changes, the structure of not being able to elect an accountable leadership who'll feel for the city, who'll feel accountable for his job, then we really can't do anything about it. This is what it looks like right now. Mumbai is just a really small percentage of Maharashtra, but the leader of Maharashtra is actually in charge, technically, of the city. And in many ways, the big urban-rural divide also adds to this problem, because none of the politicians really care about the citizens of Mumbai or citizens of any city for that matter, because we are not the electorate. The biggest influence in terms of party being elected to government is from the rural area, and they're all fragmented. So they don't have one issue to talk about, while citizens of most Indian cities have, big problems, but we don't really have a government that we can talk to. There's been a constitutional amendment to change that, but we have to be pragmatic enough to understand that that's not going to happen for a really, really long time. The states and the national government will not give away their power. A professor of mine often said that democracy in India is funded by corruption. And political party funding, happens via massive resource-rich areas as well as urban land. And unless we can fix that, which is a really, really long systemic problem, it's a tough road to kind of think about how to fix our cities. There have been places in the country where the chief ministers have really paid attention to their cities, and it's just it's driven by individual leadership. It's not because they have to do it, like they will have to do it in Bristol or London, because if they don't deliver quality of life and health in cities, you guys can throw them out. But we don't have that option. So yeah, we'll have to deal with this situation like the rest of the world has dealt with for a long time. The political situation is not going to change very quickly, and I mean, it's important to understand the economy of how India runs right now. Almost 70% of our GDP is, even though we are only 30% of the population, is urban. 70% of the GDP is urban. 90% of the taxes is urban. So that's pushing the political, at least the more, empowered politician to think about cities in the long term. But these are really tough challenges. So I went to school for 2 years to study democracy, development, and rule of law. And I had amazing mentors to think about what we should be doing, because it was really frustrating to start this entrepreneurial process and not really have any tangible, change on ground. And I mean, what we're doing right now is very, very simple. It makes us happy because we can at least see results on the ground. We've been more tactical in our programming and projects and partnerships. Things like public realm is easier to solve than trying to figure out mass transportation or affordable housing. So we've focused on decentralized, small-scale change efforts within the city. Coalition building in a more tactical manner. We've tried to figure out how to work with the state, which doesn't respond to us at all. I've really been, I've been really interested in making the market work for us. And, when you think about actors within a larger system, there's government, there's private sector, there's communities. And we experimented with all different avenues to make better public realm. And, with government, I should tell you this story because a year and a half ago, we went to the Greater Mumbai city government and said, we've got the biggest corporate in the city saying, I'm going to put so much of funds for you to start a pilot project to revive a central street in Mumbai. And we had the Barcelona city government who were engaging with us last year, who would advise us on what we should be doing in terms of reviving the spaces. And all you have to do is just participate in the process. We will even bring the local businesses and community together. I have still not heard back from them. And we follow up every week. I have someone in my office on calendar who keeps writing to them, but they just don't respond. And I thought it may be because we're just a group of young people who they don't take seriously. So we made the CEO of this big corporation, which is one of the top 5 corporates in the country, to write to them, and we've still not had a response. It doesn't make any sense. And yeah, so I still want to kind of pursue that and see where it goes. It will be a great case study, and maybe we should try it with few other governments to see if there's a pattern to this. But what has really worked for us is the market. Trying to get the market to invest into what often is considered to be non-market interest. We talk about value proposition to them and say, it's in your interest to, fix the public realm. It will add value to your property. None of the capitalist businessmen with often, most of the business people we have in India really, they're very true blue business people. They want to know what value you will provide if we did something like this. So we've had an amazing experience with this. A couple of years ago, we started a program in partnership with Columbia University, New York, to engage with practitioners from built environment who had most influence on our cities. And this group was the first year, and it was 25 of them. We invited them to participate in this 4-day program, which we now run annually. The first year was in New York. Last year we were in London, which is amazing. This year we will be in Barcelona. So this group actually controlled almost 70% of the land market in north of Mumbai. So if they actually sat together and figured out, really wanted to do something about the public realm, they could. And, we kind of actioned that plan, and we asked them nicely to see if they will do something to fix the edges of their, their land ownership and their, of their large communities. And we actually have now, and we've over the last year built about 4 or 5 small, tactical plazas in partnership with local communities. And we are currently working on almost, what is that? 8 to 9 square kilometers of land in North Mumbai. And in terms of scale of this, I mean, there are 2 projects which are almost next to each other. We don't know how that happened. It's just 2 private sector leaders. And so I mean, the population of these areas is together about 700,000 people. And they gave us their land. They almost gave us some 10 feet or 2 meters of the edge of their land. They're now allowing us to build a series of plazas along the edge. There is no footpath, as you can see. So this is what it looks like right now. And we applied, I don't know whether Jan's here, but we were really inspired by his, how to study public life kind of framework. And we've been studying it, and we've actually started the pilot last week. And this is what it looks. We've been studying multiple metrics. This is the lowest noise levels is still higher than the base normal level. In terms of activity, this is what it looks like. And yeah, so I mean, it's fun. I'm at such an exciting space that we're actually able to do this, and it's going to have an impact on almost 800,000 people. I think that's super exciting. These are some of the things which we did last year. This plaza was built in 24 hours, and we had the private landowner give away their land. The community built it, and we had about 40 artists work on it. And right now there's a school that's being run, after-school program being run at this plaza. It's called the Wish Plaza. And yeah, so these are examples. I'm going to quickly run through what we've been doing in different parts of the city. Yeah, and we'd love to collaborate with all of you to make cities in India more livable.